So to kind of contextualize today's reading, I want to kind of step back and talk a little bit about a broader anthropological theory around sex, gender, and sexuality. Right? So the first thing is the distinction between sex and gender. In anthropology, sex and gender are studied separately. Sex is the biological, the physical and genetic differences between males and females. Right? So when we think about this, it's defined by aspects of genitalia, your gonads, your testes, or your ovaries, right, and the chromosomal differences. Remember XX and XY. But the reality is that in nature, this isn't necessarily that clear cut either. Especially if we look at genetic differences, like individuals, males who are XXY, that is, they have an extra X chromosome, or males who are XYY. When we start to think about this, and that's they have an extra Y chromosome and tend to produce excess testosterone. So this has even these kind of clear-cut differences, right, aren't necessarily natural phenomena. We're not talking about sex as being the end-all, be-all of social organization representation. But we talk about sex, that is, the biological attributes that you're born with. And we contrast that with gender. And this is the cultural expectations, the thoughts and behaviors that people provide, assigned to particular groups of people based on these sex differences. Right? So when we start to look at this, gender is something that is created culturally. Every society in the world has their own conceptualizations of gender. So gender is not male or female. Gender is the cultural associations and expectations of people based on those perceived sexual differences. So when we start talking about this in reality, we're talking about sex as a biological reality of humanity as a species. We have males and females. But gender is a cultural construct that varies widely from group to group. And so there's a lot of variation from within this. Now this also, these gender ideas also bring up a host of other complexes, right? Because we assign these culturally, they also kind of create a gendered role. That is, the economic, political, and cultural activities that people are to perform according to society. So society, when it creates that gendered identity for you, right, it also creates the expectations for you to do so. And you can kind of think about the roles of men and women in our own society and make a small list of jobs that it's acceptable for men to do and for women to do. And these are all stereotypes. Right? That's not that women or men are any more capable or incapable of performing them, but we have these kinds of cultural expectations based on someone's gender. And your identity is how you feel, how you create yourself through that. Right? So how you identify yourself. Every person makes the conscious decision. Right? Gender's constructed at birth, right, through enculturation. And think about the first thing you do when you bring a child home, or when you find out you're pregnant, you find out you're having a boy or a girl, and you paint the nursery, or you buy pink and blue clothes, or you start to buy toys that are associated with certain things. Take a look at the toy aisle, right? You get pink and blue and toys that are meant to be for boys and girls separately. And just kind of as a personal aside, right? Growing up, I really wanted an easy bake oven, right? But my father always said, "No son of mine will have that kind of thing." Right? And so we can kind of start to think about these gendered constructions it's created. And toys are a great way we see how children are taught to behave as adults through this. So, but once you construct that gendered identity, it has to be maintained. Right? And that's where we get to the idea of gender performance. And Judith Butler's research here has been incredibly powerful in looking at this. And so this is the ways in which gender identity is expressed through action. Every day you choose to express your gender through the clothes you wear, the hairstyles, the makeup or absence of, facial hair, things like this. You make those conscious decisions to identify yourself as a very particular gender. And so that helps to kind of reconstruct, to reinforce your gender identity in society. And it's also a reflection of your acceptance or rejection of those gendered roles and expectations. So when we start to look at this big picture, right, we can see this being a reflection of society's expectations for individuals based on those ingrained sexual characteristics. And we can see that very clearly in the reading of the roles of men and women and their divisions from within the palace and from within broader Chinese society.